Hey, welcome back. This week I decided to do another tiny painting on these little wood panels. I really enjoyed the acrylic paintings that I did last week, and so I thought it would be really fun to do another one. This time I'm going to be doing a much more realistic painting, and I'm going to be entering it into an art contest at work. I work at a university, and every year they do a contest where employees can enter their artwork, whether it is a sculpture, a painting, or whatever. You can enter your artwork, and then other employees throughout the university get to vote on who they think has the best artwork. So in the past couple of years, I've worked with a colleague that has entered his watercolor paintings, and he wins quite often with those. They are fantastic. And so he encouraged me to enter in this year. And so I didn't really have anything that I wanted to use, so I decided to go ahead and create something new just for the contest. If you watched last week, you saw me create this cute little guy. This is a cute little mushroom, and I really like it, and I like how realistic parts of it are, but part of it is a little bit fantastical. This time I decided to go with a much more realistic painting, and I found some references of stones, basically like in a creek bed. So basically all you're seeing is all the rocks and then the shimmers of water over top. I really liked that idea. In a painting that I did last year, and basically there was you were on a beach and you could see some of the rocks under the waves, and I was thinking about that and thought, you know, that was really fun to do. I really enjoyed doing the rocks, so I thought it would be really fun to just kind of focus on the rocks and just do a tiny little painting of rocks. I started out by just doing some loose sketching of where I thought I wanted the rocks to be, and then I mixed up a really loose mix of acrylic paint and did an underpainting in kind of a browny orange colors, because I figured all the rocks are going to be kind of more of an earthy tone anyway, and that way if I did happen to miss any spots, that's what color would be showing through rather than the white. I didn't want the white showing through because that would look really unnatural. And then I just started going in and painting some of the rocks with really thin layers of acrylic. I've seen other artists do a lot of really thin layers of acrylic, and I didn't want the acrylic to have a lot of texture to it, and I know that that's one thing that I don't like about acrylic is often when I'm painting with it kind of right out of the tube, you get a lot of those paint stroke textures, and I didn't really want that for this. I wanted this to be a much smoother finish, so I thought it would make a lot more sense to try and use really thin coats of acrylic. And so right now I'm just watering it down with water. I know that there are other mediums that you can use to mix with your acrylic in order to thin it out and make it so that it applies much more smoothly. I just don't happen to have any of those, and I do know that water tends to work as well. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and try and do, is just kind of build everything up with really thin coats of paint in order to get that nice smooth texture, but also get like a lot of pigment on there and get a lot of variation in terms of the colors and in terms of the hue and saturation and all of that stuff. At the end, I was actually thinking about grabbing some of my Artix acrylic markers to do some of the final touches of the kind of water shimmers over top. I might end up using a really fine brush. I have some nice fine brushes, and if I need anything finer than that, we do have a bunch of brushes that we use for painting miniatures that are much finer than that, but I think that should probably work just fine for getting in all of the shimmers of water on top. As I started working on this, I realized that I'm not exactly following the reference, which is perfectly fine with me. I decided that I wanted some rocks in different places than I saw in the reference, and I wanted different colors. I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to the reference when I was placing colors on the rocks. I just kind of wanted to get the different colors mixed around in there so that there wasn't like a big spot of blue and a big spot of orange and a big spot of yellow or something like that. So I wanted all the colors to kind of mix around so that it made sense and so that the painting ended up being rather harmonious. I think doing little paintings like this are really good for kind of learning your color theory and learning how to mix the colors that you want. I am, to a certain extent, trying to match colors that I see in the reference photo, but I'm also not worry too much about matching it exactly, because I do want this to be my piece, not necessarily an exact replica of the reference, but it's nice to have that reference there in order to get an idea of what colors rocks can be and what kinds of variations and what kinds of patterns you might see on the rocks and that sort of thing, so that I can incorporate those into the rocks on the painting that I am making as well. I've heard lots of different artists talk about not using black, don't use black, don't use black. In this case, I am using a little bit of black in here, especially for some of those really dark shadows. I wanted to get something really, really dark in there, and black was the best option. But for some of the shadows, I'm actually mixing up kind of more of a purpley color, because I thought that would work really well for the shadow colors, and not like the really deep shadows, but kind of just to give the rocks a little bit more three-dimensionality. So a lot of the rocks, the shapes are kind of getting formed more with a purple shadow color, so that you can see as the rock turns away from the light, that sort of thing. And like I said earlier, I am trying to just build up really thin layers of paint as I'm doing this, so that I can continue to have that kind of darker shade peek through as I paint like thin glazes over top. In some cases, I do end up going back and painting over something that I had painted previously in order to adjust the color, make it lighter, make it darker, that sort of thing. And, you know, I'm going to have a lot of back and forth, I think, on some of the rocks in here, because I'm not exactly following the reference, and I'm just trying to make it look good within the painting and not necessarily, like I said, exactly match the reference. So there are quite a few times where I had to go back and redo certain rocks and kind of touch up the colors and that sort of thing. But I expected to have a little bit of back and forth in this, as I'm continuing to really learn how to use this medium and make it work the way I want it to. I'm not sure if acrylic will ever be my medium of choice necessarily, but I am enjoying working in it at the moment. I have enjoyed gouache a whole lot. I really like the vibrancy of the colors of gouache, and I like how easy it is to work with. But acrylic is really nice in that you can put down layers and not have to worry about reactivating those layers again later, which is really, really nice, because especially for this painting, like I said, I am putting down thin layers of paint and just kind of trying to really build up the color and build up the three-dimensionality and the shading and that sort of thing in here. So being able to lay something down and let it dry and not have to worry about it reactivating is really, really nice. And I'm really enjoying working on these little wooden panels. I did learn something last time that I wish I had thought about before, and that was that I really should have gessoed the sides of the panels. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the side of the little water painting that I did, and you can probably see that there is a spot of blue that is a lot lighter than the rest. That's where some gesso happened to get on the side, and the rest of the wood wasn't completely gessoed, and so I ended up getting kind of uneven coverage on the sides. Possibly if I did a couple more coats of paint on the side, I would be able to get that to be a little bit more even. At the moment, I'm not terribly worried about it, because it's just gonna live up here on the wall behind me, and I'm not really gonna look at the sides too much anyway. But before I got started on this one, I went ahead and gessoed the sides, so that way when I paint the sides, it's gonna have a much more even application of paint on the side. I haven't quite decided what color I am going to paint the side just yet, but I will probably decide that at the end. So far, I am super happy with how this is turning out. I think it's looking really good. It's looking a lot better than I actually anticipated it looking, but we'll see what it looks like when it's done. It's a lot of fun to just kind of play with each of these little rocks and add little details to each one, but not have to worry about some of them. Some of them I'm just kind of leaving very plain, just some color in there, because I don't want all of the rocks to scream for attention. There are certain ones, that some of the bigger ones, that I want to draw your attention a little bit more, and so those are getting a little bit more detail. But I'm definitely trying to put some detail into each of the rocks so that it doesn't look like there's just blobs of color in there, so that they actually look like rocks. But hopefully you will enjoy it when it's done. Oh my gosh, are you ready for this? I am absolutely blown away by how this painting turned out. Check it out. It looks so good. I am just amazed. Every time I look at this, I can't believe that this is something that I painted. This is definitely going to go on the wall behind me so that every time I come down here, I can look at it and just be like, oh my gosh, I painted that. It's so cool. I think one of the reasons that it turned out so good was because I decided to use those really thin layers of acrylic so I could build up the values and have a nice smooth application of acrylic. Because as I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of seeing all those brush strokes in my paintings, and that works so well. Absolutely 100%. The next time I do an acrylic painting, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and water it down and build it up really slowly with thin layers of acrylic. It did take longer, but the result is so worth it. Anyway, I hope you guys had a great time, and I will see you again next week. And I'm going to go ahead and end it with some close-ups of the painting.